Hello, welcome back to the Nook. I'm Daniel. And before I get started with today's review, I just want to say the camera might look a little bit slanted or skewed because I had troubles with my tripod today with my phone. For whatever reason, I couldn't get it right. It would start recording when I tried to adjust it. So if this looks a bit skewed, I apologize. It probably doesn't look the best, but it is what it is. So today I'll be reviewing The Tower of Geburah by John White, which is book 3 in the Archives of Anthropos. So what's interesting about this book is it was written in 1978, and the first book, the first two, were written in 86. So this is kind of like a prequel. Basically, John White's kids, they heard him reading Narnia to them, and one of them said, you should write a book that's like Narnia. So he wrote The Tower of Geburah, and then he kind of went back and did the other books. So before I get into the review, I'll just kind of read to you the description on the back. So it says, while investigating their Uncle John's attic, Wesley, Kurt, and Lisa mysteriously find themselves transported to Anthropos, a land of dwarfs, goblins, and djinns. There, they are unexpectedly given a mission to save a king and a country. The key to their adventure lies in the remote and ancient tower on the island of Geburah and the precious objects hidden there. What they discover, however, is more than mere treasures. They found a power that could destroy all of Anthropos. So like I said, this was written first, but it's more, it actually, if you read it, it alludes back to stuff in Gall the Conqueror and in the Sword Bear, because these kids, you heard them say Uncle John, so their Uncle John was the main character in the first two books. And now, this is years later, it's following the three children, which are Wesley, Kurt, and Lisa, who are his niece and nephews. So yeah, this was a really good story. I would say I liked it better than the first two even. I loved it. And I have read this a long time ago, years ago, but this feels very fresh because this was back in the 90s. It is now 2024 and I'm reading it again, and it just feels like it's for the first time. There were certain things that happened in this read-through that I recalled from my previous read-through, but this is really, it's very fresh. This whole series has been fresh for me because of how long ago I read them. So one thing I'd like to point out about this series compared to Narnia, because there is similarities, this series is more high fantasy than Narnia. High fantasy is like Lord of the Rings, or when I talked about Terry Brooks, just that very, lots of magical items, named weapons, and a lot of magic. That's kind of what high fantasy is, more epic. So I feel like this is, in a sense, more epic than Narnia, but I might still prefer Narnia overall. So yeah, it's very interesting because in the first two books, John found himself in Anthropos through various ways. The first one, he, of course, I think he just woke up in Anthropos one time. Or no, he went through a door. John went through a door and found himself in Anthropos. The second book, John crossed a lake in Canada and came into Anthropos. And in this book, the kids, Kurt, Lisa, and Wesley, they're in their Uncle John's attic, and there's these TVs. And I guess when they turn on one of the TVs, there's this message that appears on the screen. They think it's a program. And what it ends up being is Lisa, she's the first one to actually put her hand into the TV. And that's when she realizes this, she's actually sinking into the TV and she ends up in the world. And the kids, Kurt and Wesley, end up coming with her, and they all end up in Anthropos. So honestly, I really liked this one a lot. Like I said, it's my favorite of the series so far. I'm actually pretty far into the fourth book right now, The Iron Scepter, which could be even better than this one. It's really cool, actually, the Christian themes throughout these books, because Gaul is very present in this book. You'll remember in Gaul the Conqueror, he was the Jesus figure. So in this book, it's many years since John was there, and these kids keep hearing about Gaul. They don't know who he is. I won't spoil it, but Lisa has a very, very powerful meeting with Gaul, and because she embraced kind of the darkness in a sense. Something that happened in the book where she was embracing darkness, she was embracing evil, and then she meets Gaul, and that changes her life. And I thought that was very powerful. And the other kids have their experiences with Gaul. You can kind of see the references to Narnia, because Wesley, the main boy, he's kind of like Peter. You can see Kurt as Eustace, and Kurt even has a bit of a Eustace arc where there's a bit of a betrayal. That's all I'll say. I don't want to spoil it. But yeah, it's really good. I still highly enjoy it, and I recommend it to anyone who wants to read kind of more high fantasy that's kind of like Narnia. Of course, read the first two books first. You could start with Tower of Geburah, but I highly suggest starting with The Sword Bearer and then Gaul the Conqueror, because there are things that happen in those first two books that are essentially mentioned in in Tower of Geburah from the first two. So it really enriched my read through having read those first two books. So yeah, it's an adventure they go on. They end up saving a king, kind of to establish a kingdom, and they deal with like a sorcerer. Yeah, it's I mean it's high fantasy at its best. I mean, I'm sure there's other authors I like better, but for this sort of young adult middle grade series, this has been a really good read through, and I've been really enjoying it. And I highly recommend to anyone who wants to read these. Yeah, start with the Sword Bearer, read Call to Conquer, and then read this book. And I'm gonna just keep reviewing these books as I read through them, and I'll keep it spoiler free. So yeah, that's about it. And I highly recommend this if you've read the first two. And remember to like, subscribe, and remember, you're always welcome at the Nook. Bye.